All right, everyone. Welcome to the Real Estate Game Changers Show. I'm your host, Mike McKay, based in Jacksonville, Florida. And we do this show every week. This season's a little bit different than previous seasons. We used to interview people every week. Now I do a solo episode every other week. And sometimes I come on here with Louisa, my wife, who runs a business with me, and we do a joint episode. But Louisa is sick today, so you guys got me. So, what I want to talk about today is we went back and did a study the other day, and I want to talk about how we lost $3 million in 2024. This is the stuff that no one really wants to talk about. I don't mean we actually we're negative $3 million. What I mean is, I wanted to go back and see through all the leads in our CRM last year who sold their property off market to another investor. So we went back and exported all the data from the CRM. We imported it into batch leads, and we looked who sold their properties. And of all the data in our CRMs over the last 3 years, there were about 2,000 properties that sold, not just in the 2024, but there was about 2,000 that sold. We had about 7,000, 8,000 leads in the CRM. Now, of course, a lot of those sold retail, so they're not truly missed opportunities. So we dug in a bit more, and last year we found out that we had 124 properties that sold to other entities that were never listed on the market. And then we narrowed that down further, and we excluded some that we said were kind of impossible deals, right? They were sold at the foreclosure auction and the payoff was too high, that we wouldn't have been able to buy it before auction. There were a couple other reasons in there. Maybe we got a lead from the person who was the new buyer. It wasn't the sale that actually happened. So in reality, when we looked back in that data, we had missed out on 87 deals in about 12 months that had sold to other entities and were never listed on the market. In other words, basically our perfect target avatar for our business. So I want to share with you guys, we wanted to then figure out, okay, we missed out on these. Why did we miss them? So that we can ensure that that doesn't happen again this year. And the reason I came up with about 3 million in revenue, that assumes making about 35 grand on a deal, which is a pretty reasonable number for us to be making on a deal. So I'll share with you guys the reasons, and I'll also share with you what we're going to implement in order to make sure that this year we're able to take advantage of all the leads in our system. I'm not expecting that we're going to be able to get 100% of them, but I don't think we should have missed out on nearly as many as we should. We should have captured at least $1 million of that revenue. So I'll just read off the ones that happened the most. So of the 87 actual missed deals, 42 of them happened because we didn't follow up with a qualified lead. What that means is a sales rep spoke to them. They marked them in our system as hot, warm, or cold. That person met our qualification criteria, and we just didn't follow up with them, or we didn't follow up with them enough. So that was 42 actual missed deals. Right behind that was not enough calls to a new lead. So when a new lead comes in for us, we put them in a campaign called 10 Days from Hell. They should be getting at least 2 double dials a day for 10 days. I don't remember the exact metric we used to measure this, but these were people who weren't even close to hitting those 40 calls in the first 10 days. So we lost about 25 to that. 16 we lost from speed to lead. We just didn't call them fast enough when that lead came in. And some of these, obviously these numbers might not add up exactly to 87 because some of these had multiple issues, right? There were some times where we didn't follow up with a qualified lead and we didn't make enough calls to a new lead. So the numbers won't exactly add up to 87. This one was one that was particularly one we should have paid attention to we didn't follow up after an appointment, right? They didn't sell these are people who didn't sell immediately after. So it's not like they just picked another offer, but a couple months later, they ended up selling the property. We try to run about 8 appointments a week per sales rep. So it wouldn't have been that crazy to actually go back and reach out to those people once a month and stay top of mind. And then we lost about 14. The sales rep disqualified the lead and they sold within 6 months. So, probably could have done a little bit better from a sales perspective there. So when I look at this and we sat down and really looked at this data and we said, okay, well, what is like the easiest thing that we can implement in order to ensure that this doesn't happen? So I'll share a couple of the ideas we came up with. Some of them we started to implement, some of them we didn't. But I think these things are going to make a big difference in our business. So didn't follow up with a qualified lead. We created some additional smart lists in the CRM for our sales reps that automatically shows anyone who's assigned to them who's a follow-up date for the current month or their follow-up date is overdue. We used to have like pipelines where they could see like all their assigned leads sorted by follow-up date and all their hot leads, but I think they really said they like the view of being able to see the whole month so they can see what's coming up even in the future, and also be able to reach out to people who are overdue follow-ups. Also, when we created that list, we realized that there was a lot of people. We have a field in our CRM that says next follow-up date, and there was just a lot of people who just didn't have that field filled out. So that's one thing we're going to do. Another thing that we're going to do there is we do get a lot of leads. We still do a lot of cold calling. We get a lot of inbound leads too. So there is certainly capacity of what people can handle. So one thing we actually had this in place before, but we're going to start using it more, is there is a campaign that we created in our dialer for sales reps, not for cold calling, that the sales rep can go in and any follow-up that they have that's 5 or more days overdue is automatically going to go into this dialer campaign. And that will allow them to dial multiple lines to make sure they are able to get in touch with those people without having to dial them one by one. So I think that's going to be something really helpful. We had that, we just weren't really using it. So we're putting more emphasis on using that. Another thing, and this is kind of almost embarrassing to say that, after being in this business for almost 4 years at this point, the only drip campaigns that we had set up were for new leads. So we have not implemented this yet, but is on my list of things to do in the next week, which is we're going to create drip campaigns, text messages, WhatsApp messages, maybe even some mail. We're going to start off with simple with just text, but if someone hasn't had a conversation with someone on our team in more than a certain amount of days, we'll probably do it at 30 days. Then we're going to put them in a drip campaign so they at least start getting some text messages from us. And if they show interest, so we can push them kind of back to the front of the pile to reach out with them. I know that sounds like a really basic thing and probably something that we should have had set up like 3 years ago. But I guess the lessons learned today. That's the main things we're going to do to not follow up with qualified leads. We do have another thing that I'll share that we have been using, which is that we have a list. We have a rule that if you have a lead, let's say a hot lead, it's your responsibility to have a conversation with that lead every 15 days. A hot lead for us is someone who wants to start the selling process in the next 30 days and meets our other criteria. So we have a campaign called a smart list and a campaign in the dialer called free for all. So if a sales rep, let's say they have a lead in hot and they haven't not just made a call to them, but actually made a connection with them and had a conversation with them in the last 15 days, another sales rep is going to be able to go in there and take that lead from them if they call and that person answers. Now, the sales reps are pretty good at staying on top of their hot leads, but as we add more sales reps, this becomes more effective for like the warm and cold leads, where maybe the sales reps are they have a lot of good appointments, they're focused on their hot leads, but understandably, it's probably the right decision. They're neglecting their cold leads. But it doesn't mean that another rep who's having a slower day shouldn't be able to go in there and call their cold leads if they haven't been called in a month or haven't had a conversation with someone in a month. So we do have that in place, but at the moment we only have 2 sales reps, a third one starting next week. So I think as we get the sales team up to 5 reps, which is where I want it to be, that's going to be something that's going to be really effective. Not enough calls to new lead. I mean, this is just really just keeping an eye on the metric and really hammering it home more. Um, we've got a metric on our scorecard now of for outbound leads, we want to make you making 4 calls a day when they come into them as a new lead for the first 10 days. And for inbound leads, our goal is actually to make 10 calls a day to them. So the only thing we changed is we created that separate metric for inbound leads because they tend to be a little further down the pipeline in terms of more ready to sell. So we're tracking that every day. We have a morning sales huddle and we go over all the numbers from the day before. And I have a section of it. It's kind of like focus areas that are, the reps read up all their numbers from the previous days. How many calls do they make? How many conversations do they have? How many appointments do they book? How many appointments do they hold? How many contracts they got? But we have a section at the bottom for areas of focus. And this is adding that new metric there, which is number of calls a day to inbound leads being 10 is a metric that we're focusing on. Speed to lead. We have been tracking this metric for a long time on that morning report. Our goal is to get to a lead in under 10 minutes. Really faster for inbound leads. But I think one thing we might implement here is, especially for those inbound leads, is besides answering them live, it's, if someone doesn't answer, or if it's a form fill, or someone, for example, sends a text message to us, like a prospect does, I want to set something up where our CRM can call all of the sales reps, and the sales rep can just pick up the phone and it will say, hey, press 1 and I will call the lead for you. So I think that'll be helpful because sometimes, especially in the afternoon, the sales reps are out between appointments and they have the CRM app notifications on their phone, but they don't necessarily, always, see them. Or, if they're driving or something like that, they can have someone on speakerphone and make that call. So that's one thing we're really focusing on. Didn't follow up after appointment. Yeah, we should be doing this. What I implemented already to ensure that we better do this is there is a smart list that I created, and it's just called past appointments. And it's any appointment that we held who's not in the dead stage. Dead stage means that like they're just not worth following up ever. Like maybe their payoff's like 100 grand more than we could ever pay for the house, or there's like 17 errors or something crazy. So I created a smart list in the CRM for that. So now if the reps are having like a slower day, they can go back and they can call through not just their past appointments, but anyone's past appointments, and see what's going on with that person, see if we should set another appointment, see if anything's changed. Um, that seems like a pretty easy win there for us. I think there's a couple hundred people that we have in past appointments who haven't sold and are not in the dead category. So it doesn't take that much effort to go through there and pull out 16 deals a year. And then with the sales reps disqualifying less than 6 months before sale, I mean that's just sales training, right? Keep doing what we're doing, train the basics of sales every single day, and just get better. So that's our plan. I don't know if anyone else has any suggestions. Maybe there's things that I didn't think of here. I would love to hear from anyone. Um, Maybe I have some blind spots here, but we're really, our first thing we're focusing on is making sure we follow up enough with those qualified leads, because that was 42 missed deals. So somewhere around about $1.3 million last year. And now we're generating more leads than ever before. So that number is only going to increase this year. So we need to make sure we're on our game with following up with qualified leads. So other things I want to talk about. And I want to talk about this because I've had a lot of people ask me about this. And I've explained it individually to a lot of people, but I figured I would talk about it on the podcast because then I can kind of direct people to the podcast so I don't have to repeat myself a bunch of times. But I realized last year that I asked myself the question. I said, what is I'm pretty good at building systems. I'd say it's one of the things I'm uniquely good at. And I asked myself the question, what is the one system that I can build that would make a lot of the other systems like easier or unnecessary to build? And I realized that I needed to build a system that would allow me to hire what I call 10x hires. 10x hires are people who are going to come in and they're just going to change the game for you. And we've definitely made several of those hires. But I was like, how can I do this in a way that's repeatable at scale and is going to allow me to bring the best talent in to work with us? And so that's been my focus really for this quarter. Our goal is to hire 4 10x hires this quarter. Um, and the rocks that I've been working on in order to do that is the first one I had is I was going to create a hiring playbook. What I realized is that I had a lot of this hiring information in my head, how to come up with the attributes of someone we want to hire, how to write the RREK, which is the document stands for roles, responsibilities, expectations, and key numbers, how to put a job post together, how to build out the automations that get people through that hiring process so only the best people are sitting in front of you. And I realized that because it was all in my head, people kept having to come to me on my team. People who were my department directors would have to come to me whenever they needed to hire someone. And I would either have to explain it to them, or even if they knew it already, I'd still have to build out all the automations for each role. So, what I created, I took 3 days outside the office to work on my rocks early in the quarter because my rocks pretty much impacted our entire quarterly goal. And that was incredibly helpful just to do that and get them out of the way. But what I created was in Notion, a playbook that really brings people step by step of how to do everything from kind of writing the attributes we want to creating the job post to creating the automations to how to run each stage of the interview process so that now everyone on my team can go in there and I'm sure they'll have questions, but they have a manual to be able to run the majority of the process without me. And I think that's going to be a total game changer. We did build something pretty cool in there, which is the first 2 sections of it are writing 25 attributes of someone that they want to hire, and then writing the REK. And we actually built a ChatGPT bot that you can do those 2 things, and then you plug it into the ChatGPT bot, and it comes up with a job post for you. And I was kind of curious how that job post would sound, and you know, I, I know I personally don't like writing job posts. I mean, it takes hours to write a good job post that's going to attract the right candidates. And I was shocked. I mean, you can take that information that you do in those first 2 sections, put them into the Chat GPT bot, and maybe tweak the job post for 10 or 15 minutes, and you've got an amazing job post. So that also reduces a lot of time in order if we're gonna hire for a new role, we can get that job post up quickly. And if anyone wants access to the sales playbook I created, it's in Notion. I can share it with you. Also, I know I've already shared the ChatGPT job post builder with a lot of people. But if anyone wants access to that, just let me know. I'm happy to send you the link to it. The the second part of my rock that I worked on is I had done this for individual jobs before, but I basically had created for the sales jobs I was hiring for a way that people can apply to our job. And then as long as they follow the steps, they can book self schedule. As long as they pass all these steps, they can self schedule an interview on my calendar within 2 days of them applying to the job post. And they're only qualified people sitting in front of me. And I can go more into that on another episode. But what I did is I took that kind of framework that I did for the job post and I created an SOP around it. So now I have a standard template in my hiring CRM that my team can copy for every job they're hiring for and achieve that same level of automation without me having to build it all out for each role. I simplified it a lot. I made it really easy and scalable. So now for any role we hire for, we can get that job post up and we can have that process where people are able to just apply on Indeed or apply on our website and receive automations to go through that process and self-schedule an interview on the hiring manager's calendar. And those steps are like they have to do a predictive index assessment, and then we do one-way video interviews using a company called a software called Criteria Corp. And Criteria Corp also has some assessments in there as well. Right now, like one that the main one we use is for international hires. We use their English assessment because we obviously need a certain level of English for people to be able to work here and to kind of understand the day to day. So that's been a game changer because we can put a job post up now, and all the hiring manager has to do is go and watch those one-way video interviews and look at the resume. When the candidate applies and they take the PI, they have to score a 7 out of 10 or more as a match for the role in order to receive the invite to the one-way video interview. So it really makes it easy for the hiring manager, and then the hiring manager, all they have to do is if they like the candidate, they just move them one stage in the CRM, and that candidate gets a text or a WhatsApp if they're international, and a email to self-schedule an interview on the hiring manager's calendar. So that's been a game changer for us. So the final thing I want to talk about today is something that I'm really focusing on installing in myself personally, and just throughout running the business, throughout hiring, which is more important than pleasing others, is being an inspiration. And I get that by doing what I want. And I'm kind of a more independent profile if you look at any of the PI or any of that. So I haven't been one that's afraid to offend people in the past. But what I've realized now is I need to be very ruthless with my time and ruthless with the people who I'm going to allow to join our team and the level of performance that I expect from people. And a lot of that looks like, I mean, there's parts of our hiring process when I'm interviewing salespeople where, my first round interview, I have multiple people come in at once, and some people are there for just a couple minutes. And I just tell them, I don't think this is going to work. And thanks for coming in. I realize that it's not worth wasting even a couple minutes of my time just being nice to have like a conversation if I know right away that I'm not going to hire that person. And by doing that, it sets kind of a new level of standard for the person that we're looking to hire. And it also just makes the process kind of easier. So I realize it's more important to do things to build a company that's going to inspire people and inspire the people that I want to work here than it is just to make sure some people's feelings don't get hurt who come in for an interview. So that's all I've got for this week. I hope you guys took something away from this. If you want any of the things that I mentioned, whether it's the hiring playbook, whether it's the ChatGPT job post creator, I may have mentioned a few other things. Feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to send them to you. I'd also be really interested to hear if anyone has anything that might be a good idea for me to solve some of those issues that caused us to miss deals in the last year. So I'd love to hear your feedback on that. And thanks for joining.